right, good morning again. So I finished Luke's live stream, or not live stream, his thing from yesterday, which he was going over Father Maxim Lysak in the inner person of the Orthodox tradition, the powers of the soul. And I'm going to share this and see if it works. Got nobody watching. I figure Saturdays are slow days. I didn't see anybody else on. But there were a couple things that was happening. Let's do this. Let's do... Oh, what happens when I do full screen? No.
I don't know if
So
Sam
I
talked
can
about
hear
monkey
this.
gammon, but Sam did.
Can you
tell
hear
me,
this? Can
and
you
Sam,
hear that?
Say hello. He said he Severus
Hated this video.
well, and
I don't.
And then he read some quotes.
I don't mean to be triggering. Let's pause this for a second. But I found it very helpful and interesting. So there were a couple things. For one, I think pictures would be helpful, especially when they're talking about the different parts, the pneuma and the spirit, and the distinction between those two things within the body. I found it difficult to kind of keep up in my head, especially because of the verbiage they're using. There was a part in here where they were talking about the understanding of reality and the expressing of reality, which I know that there are parts of the brain that do language, and they're on opposite sides of the brain. So one side is for hearing and understanding language, and the other side, so it has to flow through the corpus callosum. Which is interesting because this is like this area of nerve bundles. This is what they do when they do a lobotomy. They cut that connection between the two. So I thought that could be something that we explored. But what I really found interesting, and Ian touches on it at the end of the video, is like the I believe the word we're using now is the synchronicity and how things kind of work. So I thought, and to your point here, Brett, a little bit, is that I think Luke did a good job of chewing on this thing and then swallowing it down. So in the spirit, because I mean, what this was in some ways a response to the cool thing that happened in the TLC a couple mornings ago, where this kind of motif kind of flowed through all the channels. And it kind of came to the end with what I was attempting to do in that final stream of his, was to say, hey, look, like, instead of it being what Grimm called an interdenominational infighting, like, what if people could see the practicality of these things, of the theology being laid out? And I don't like using the term win a soul, but and that's why I was trying to stay on the fishing theme, is like, entice me, use the powers and the manipulative ways of the language for good, right? To try to win a soul, especially somebody who is sitting on the fence of these two traditions. So anyway, what I thought, what his response here is interesting, because I think it in a way embodies his belief structure, right? Because the common saying that I've heard from the Orthodox tradition is that you can't speak it. You can, but you got to go to a service. You got to experience it. And so I found that actually somewhat beautiful, that he responds in this way, and maybe not even subconscious, like directed towards me. And this is probably my own like self-centeredness going, yes, somebody's talking to me. So I had to point out to Luke that he misquoted the priest. Well, I mean, he goes through it. So what I thought we would do, what I thought I would do, I've already asked permission from my wife. That was a shot to, because I saw Ken here, and Ken and Claire do their thing usually on our morning show. So that was kind of a shot to Claire. I have permission from my queen to do this, because this is, as I said, my first day on vacation. And so, I think she wants to do something. So what I thought we could do, and I probably won't get all the way through this, I'm also potentially going to be showing my hypocrisy once again, because I got a warning on StreamYard that I'm approaching my time. So I may have to subscribe to StreamYard, furthering my descent into Hades by getting a StreamYard account that's not free. So
I think I'll do that first.
Can you guys
I will
hear?
do that first.
Yeah, that's
and then,
good.
Well, go on. I can't share them because it's in Signal, which I do have Signal on my computer. So
yeah, okay. So you said you can hear. So what I think
Servetus. There you go. Servetus. I was like, why does that sound so dumb? Because it's wrong. Oops. So one of the
let's go. Let's see where he introduces, and we'll just go kind of right from there.
Depend. Oh yeah, no, right here. And he says it's related to AI, which I don't know. When I listened to this, I was not thinking AI at all. I was thinking
that's an interesting thing too, because this was a seed from Jordan Hall, kind of adjacentness that I've been enamored recently with the travel of things. It reminds me of like an old car one that I did, where I was talking about being a good bumblebee and kind of bouncing around and regurgitating for the sweetness of the honey. Just, this is probably my favorite aspect about what we're doing here.
I was thinking how it's so funny because I'll relate it to this. In my intuition, which is, I guess, nous, noetic insight, noetic knowledge, pure intuition, I think. It's just the ability to see something is in the fathers, at least this father, what's his name? Maxim Lysak. I hope he's not a sack of lies. Lysak. He talks about the breakdown. So it's like nous, logos, and pneuma is kind of the classic breakdown of the soul. And the nous.
Okay, so this is where I thought a picture could be good. So I don't know if I need to do paint or whatever, but he said the breakdown of the soul was into 3, which I like because it's that fractal pattern, right? If the true God is 3 persons, then the true human should also be 3 persons.
Others, at least this father, what's his name? Maxim Lysak. I hope he's not a sack of lies. Lysak.
I just wanted to hear that again.
He talks about the breakdown. So it's like nous, logos, and pneuma.
Nous, logos, and pneuma. Pneuma are the 3 parts of the Trinitarian human.
Is kind of the classic breakdown of the soul. And the nous is...
Or just the soul. So again, if it's fractally, it'll go all the way. And I think I mentioned this a little while ago. So that's just the soul.
Is the intuitive faculty that sees things. And the logos is the ability to articulate that. So it's almost the same thing. It's mirroring God as the light of the world, or God as uncreated divine light, noetic light almost.
Okay. I also equate that to like the eternal spark.
And then the logos is the light to the world. It's the light so that you can see it. You know, the light by which you see, so that that gap is communicated, is mediated. All right, let's get into it. Anyhow, Jordan Hall, highly.
So where was the pneuma? I also mapped that to Christ being the Word, right? So I've come to the idea that my voice, the words you're hearing me speak on this live stream, can't be disconnected from who I am. Especially if I'm doing everything I can to speak as truly as possible. It's that integration. And so that's oftentimes how I look at the second person of the Trinity, is the voice of God. This is why Christ said he was there on the mountain with the burning bush. And then you also have the spirits hovering over. It's almost like the spirit's kind of like the connective tissue or the nervous system, all this autonomic part of the body that just functions. That's the spirit. I don't know. I still work on the spirit, but anyway.
Really recommends it, as you can see. Okay, now we're going to go back to the actual thing and play it. Here we go. Let's play.
To the Law of the Spirit with Father Maxim, Father Macterio.
About the soul and the heart and the mind. And this evening I wanted to speak to you about three aspects of the soul, three powers of the soul. And I'll use first of all the terms in Greek. They are nous, logos, and pneuma. Nous, which is usually translated as intellect, but we're going to speak more about it this evening. And we're going to demonstrate that, in fact, English has no good translation for the word nous. Logos can be fairly easily translated as word, although in Greek it can also refer to intelligence. And pneuma is very well translated by the word spirit in English. So in speaking of the three powers of the soul, I have used this evening what is a kind of a standard approach in the Fathers. Certainly this is the approach of St. Gregory Palamas. I'm not saying that all of the Fathers of the Church used exactly this model in speaking of the powers of the soul. And so you're
also, again, that goes to the general orthodoxy thing that a lot of, I think, who said this? Nathan Jacobs said this. Someone else in a corner or corner adjacent said it. I've said it. You can, and I said this recently on Twitter, if you try to preclude and exclude, especially systematically, difference, and if you have a libidinal desire to eliminate difference, you will never have proper knowledge. And you will never know how to love. And you actually will never actually have unity. You'll just have uniformity. The Fathers can speak and have different models, and they can all be faithful. Like, that's inherent to Christian theology, or to any, well, not, that's inherent to any livable way of interacting with the world. Because you have to have that unity and multiplicity. Anyhow, back to the guy. I mean, seems like that's fine. Let's go.
going to see a little bit of,
and I tend to take that even maybe one step further, and maybe this is wrong, but this is where I think God can reach people no matter where they are. is because it can also go further. It may be another derivative pass, but in the act of participating in a derivatives trade, you're making the derivative real. And there's something in that. And again, this isn't like saying that it's 100% right? But there's still got to be that spark in anything that is there.
Variety in the terminology of the fathers, which is perfectly fine. They are saying the same thing essentially, but they are sometimes using terminology in a slightly different way. All of them, of course, speak of the inner person and of the powers of the soul. So let's speak first of all about the nous. The one that last time I said could be translated by...
That inner person was interesting to me. I would say at this stage of my walk, I know there's something good about that inner person, but that inner person has proven himself to be nothing more than a self-centered POS. And so I try to keep that son of a gun locked away, shoved in a box in the back. I forget the actual character. It was like the Cat of Nine Tails or something, Naruto. Like I got that sucker just piled away. This came up with Megan too, and when she was over here, and the integration of that. Like that was the story of Naruto where he integrated that. But I don't like it. And I want to find a way to love that thing properly.
Either mind or intellect. I think we'll see this evening that we need to generate a new word in English, perhaps, as a translation for it, or at least qualify all of the translations that we have. The fathers of the church refer to the nous as the eye of the soul, or sometimes as the purest aspect of the soul's faculty of spiritual awareness. It's that aspect of the soul that allows the soul to have a direct, unmediated experience of God, which is really something quite fantastic.
Direct. Okay, this is the kind of thing I can't distract myself because I want to keep going with him because the point is to get into the meat of this video. Faithful needs elaboration for me. Yeah, that would be a great whole like podcast thing. Faithful isn't identical replication. That's essentially the same thing. It's related to what I was talking about. It allows to have.
I would say it's a baby step.
Difference. Faithful is, it's probably related to this very topic. Faithful is, you're faithful to the spirit of the thing, not the identical physical replication of the thing, which allows for unity and multiplicity. It's what allows for a symphony. A symphony is harmonious and faithful to the score, but it's not the same. They're not the same.
So I take that one step further and make it more dimensional. So you're talking about the different pieces of the orchestra, but I'm saying that there's maybe different orchestras stretched over dimensionality. And that's where the baby steps can take place. This is one of the, what I think is one of the most beautiful things about the growth of Christian, the peering through of God into the individual as they grow. So you can have the beauty of the Christian that's the last one to come to the field, right? That hasn't had the opportunity to grow, but they mimicked to start because they saw something there and God loved them the same.
Okay.
when you think of it, that the human person has that capacity. Every person has the capacity to have a direct, unmediated experience of God. And that is quite something, because we are created and God is uncreated. And so normally you might not have expected that we would have such an innate capacity to have a direct, unmediated experience of God, but we do. And this is part of the image of God that was.
See, and that's like a big distinction. There, I would argue, there are certain theological frameworks and systems of thought and doctrines that would deny that all people have direct,
I think he rewinds this. So
unmediated, what did you just say? Access to God.
God's an innate capacity. You might not have expected that we would have such an innate capacity to have a direct, unmediated experience of God, but we do.
We have a direct, innate capacity. We have an innate capacity for direct, unmediated access to God.
So I see this as the Reformation's argument was that that's what they were calling for, was we don't need to go through priest and that sort of thing. And that could be the sold version of the truth that's been passed down to me. I'm open to that idea. But that's what I talk about on my channel, is my experience with that divine spark, with that intuition that I don't think it comes from me. It's too good. It's too sweet. It's not coming from the cage I got in the freaking basement. It's coming from this grand place of warmth and light.
I would argue original guilt people do not affirm that. And I think it's wrong. And then they talk about common grace stuff, but that's not what he's talking about. Like, these are different things. It's not semantic. They're different. This is where.
So I got lost a little bit there with the common grace thing. The way I'm understanding it as, I guess, a lay person is that this could be the argument that God loves everyone and wishes everyone to be saved. Because I believe that too. But I also believe that that love is so great. And I could see where he's got a problem with this, if this is what he's talking about. Is that it's no different in loving a girl in high school who just doesn't love you back. And somebody saying, if you truly love them, you'll let them go. That's what I feel is the love of God. And no matter how much it kills him, he's going to let you do that. He's going to let you reject him. And that's got consequences.
Where propositions probably are pointing to something that matter. Okay.
And this is part of the image of God that was granted to humanity as a gift. In the fathers of the church, the nous is very much associated with the heart. Sometimes they're used virtually synonymously, virtually. And so the expression...
For me, this is the head-heart distinction that I've been talking about through my struggles with understanding that my son needs to leave to experience the world, but my heart telling me that the cost could be more than I could bear.
Noetic activity is sometimes translated in English as prayer of the heart. The nous, in order to function well, needs to keep its connection with the heart. It needs to remain a function of the heart and not be replaced by any other function or power of the soul. I'm going to explain this in greater detail in a few minutes. The
This is where I started thinking pictures could be helpful.
nous receives impressions and information from the senses. It should not be equated with the senses. And this aspect of
This is all like very, if you're like a philosophical materialist, modernist type who thinks the only thing you can know is sensory information, like whatever post-Kantian stuff, tons of people talk this way, like all we can know is what we have from our senses. No, you have a faculty behind your senses. That is the thing apprehending your senses. This is the thing that is aware, the thing that is aware of awareness, the seer. There's something behind that stuff. When you meditate, the thing that pays attention to your thoughts or that can let thoughts go, there's something behind it.
And I can map to that very well with my talk with we are the age. I'm wondering if arena wouldn't be. We are the arena in which the transformation of the material goes to the spiritual. And it's happening in there. I mean, as clear as day with something I'm seeing on the string gets flipped upside down, turns into neurotransmitter sensors, and then pumped into my brain, where it is then processed into the spirit.
the soul, so intimately connected with the heart, was deeply affected by the fall, by the advent of death and sin into the world. And I'm going to mention just 4 ways, there are more, 4 ways in which the nous was affected by the fall. First of all, the fall caused the nous.
And the first thing I thought about was it's not just the fall. Near Eastern context would say that there were 3 falls.
Nous to be darkened.
Okay, that's darkened. And he will say the fall caused the nous to be darkened, not eradicated, not eliminated, not destroyed. Darkened. Okay.
And I would agree. That's that divine spark we see in everybody, and why we're to love up to and including our enemies is because despite the things that they are doing or projecting or representing or participating in the world, there still remains that divine spark that God has in that thing. And so that if God is the highest, because every individual person holds that, and this is where I think the vegans have it right, I think that's even in the animal world. I don't know if it's in a rock, but at least in the kitty cats that we love, meow meow, right? It's even in that.
Or keep going.
Secondly, and I'll go back to these, it caused it to be diffuse.
That's key too.
Thirdly, it caused it to be weakened and sometimes replaced. Fourthly, and you may find the way I phrased this curious, the fall caused the nous to seek religion.
I like that.
Here you go,
I
all
really
you
like that.
like haters of industrial religion. This part's awesome. This is a huge part of why I went Orthodox.
Instead, you may find the way I phrased this curious, the fall caused the nous to seek religion instead of a personal God revealed in Trinity.
Oh, sorry, Sam. Don't be triggered. So the fall made the nous, the darkened nous, seek religion rather than a person revealed in Trinity. And I think by Trinity, he's just talking about Jesus Christ, but but that's the whole, because he's fully God. You've seen me, you've seen the Father. So when you see Jesus, you do see the Father. 2 Corinthians 4:2, to behold the glory of God in the face of Jesus Christ, which is also that Servetus quote. And also, yes, I agree, Claire. Just because you say it doesn't mean it's true. Just cause.
Sorry. So the question that pops into my mind right now is, if all three of the things of the Trinity are all God, then all three of these things within the soul are the soul also, because it's got to be fractal. It's got to be true all the way down the stack.
That's also Radiohead. Let's keep going.
The nous needs to be illumined, but it cannot be illumined without the purification of the heart. This is why these two things are so much connected in patristic literature, in the writings of the fathers of the church. We speak, first of all, when speaking about the spiritual state.
Okay, he's talking about this, but like the nous cannot be enlightened. Enlightening the light of your eyes, right? Purifying your eye, taking the log out of your eye, rather than worrying about the speck in your brother's. So purifying your eyes so the eyes of your heart may be enlightened, yes, so that you can see the divine light through your inner man. That doesn't happen without purifying your heart. Those are coterminous things, meaning, and he'll talk about this, through the intellect itself, through the fallen logos, you cannot perceive noetic sight, divine light. You can't experience God and see God through the fallen logos. The logos is fallen, but like these are these distinctions these fathers have. So like and that's what I call the egoic intellect. You cannot apprehend or see God through your fallen intellect, because that's where deception happens. And that's the realm of, I think, the cherubs and Satan. And that's where Satan realms, the prince of the power of the air. You have to purify your eye, which is why holiness, it's not intelligence. Listen to what people say when we glorify intelligence. We say, oh, that person's smart. Listen to that person because they're smart. That just means they're dangerous. Smart people are.
Okay, so this is where I'm starting to get, okay, because he said earlier that the nous is considered the divine intellect. It's also considered the eye of the soul, the purest part, and the heart. Now, this nous is darkened, diffuse, and weakened. Because of the fall. Sin keeps it that way, keeps it darkened and weakened. This is why we feel isolated from God when we sin. I'm trying to gather, because that is the intellect. Because these things that I see through my intuition, these things that pop into my head when I'm in dialogos or just walking a path or looking and seeing the Milky Way on the back porch of a mountain home. I'm seeing it. Maybe harder to see in the pathway back out of the muck and mire of the swamp or the pig pen that we've created for ourselves because we love the darkness. I don't know. I think I have to disagree with that a little bit because of that caged animal that I got in the basement.
They're just dangerous. Their capacity through their fallen intellect makes them very dangerous. Only trust holy people.
Well, so
Like,
I will agree with that, in that but it's because of the 99% truthness about it all. right? It's framed improperly. It's an improper relationship with the intellect. It's because it's done for the self, not for the emptying.
If you don't believe that I'm an actual good person, listen to nothing I have to say.
I'm going to keep going.
Smart matters very little. Like, it's fine. It's fine. It's a gift if you use it. The law is just if you use it lawfully. Smart is just if you use it wisely. Okay, well, back to this guy.
In patristic literature, in the writings of the fathers of the church, we speak, first of all, when speaking about the spiritual stages through which a person passes in the Christian life, we speak first of the purification of the heart, and then the illumination of the nous, or the intellect. That is because there is no such thing as an illumined nous with a heart that has not been purified. And the nous...
Okay, I believe I asked him, like, how does that get purified? My understanding up to this point has been that has been purified by the sacrifice of Christ. That's what washes those sins away. And this may be wrong, but living on this side of death, I have come to a place where I need the washing over and over again. Even if I live exactly the way that I think I'm supposed to live today, I know that 3 months now, 6 months now, the next season from now, new things are going to pop up that are just being revealed to me that I've done improperly. It's like this constant, we don't just wash our clothes once, right? We wear them and they need to be washed again. And if we're going to be broken so that other people can see the brokenness and know they're not alone, it's got to be continual. It's got to be over and over and over again, which sucks. That's my point with the Sermon on the Mount, you know? Blessed are those who mourn. Because we got to mourn over and over and over again.
Is illumined in part through obedience to Christ's commandments. This is how the heart is purified, when we obey the Lord's commandments out of love. And through the rejection of sinful...
I agree that helps in this moment, but like I will never know all there is to know. And there's constantly revealing as we climb the ladder. You know, we talk about a lot about the U-shaped descent into hell, but after we get back out of hell, then we got to climb to heaven. If we are the ones doing the climbing, if I'm the one driving up the mountain, which I don't think I'm driving. I think I'm just participating. I think I'm in the bus that's moving up the mountain. And as the participants of those that are inside the bus get closer and closer to the infinite, more and more is revealed that's got to be taken off. And that's sinful too.
Sinful and passionate thoughts. The nous in sinful people is weakened. And
we're all sinners.
And almost dead. Sometimes I refer to it as lost.
Lost. Okay, that's good. I wanted to highlight this. Great comment, Grim. Great. Exactly. I mean, that's another one. That's a thing that could do a whole, you could do a whole thing on, a whole series on. What's the difference between having your attention on God and having your attention on your thoughts about God? Exactly. It's maps and territory stuff.
I kind of think it's prayer. It's a commitment to prayer. Very much in the vein of what Brian's doing, that imaginative prayer, and incorporating that into every step I take through the day until he's walking with us in the cool of the day.
I think it's humility stuff. It's also related to my long signal that was fantastic about what Jed and OG Rose were talking about, is the binary logic of that distinction, and then the I don't know thing. The I don't know that allows you to move into certainty is the living kind of knowledge that allows you to repent.
He said the certainty word.
If your knowledge is on your thoughts of God rather than on God, you can't actually ever repent of your thoughts of God because you're conflating the map with God. Keep going.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Nous. Not the obliterated nous, but the lost nous. And when it's weakened or lost or almost dead, it seeks out this aspect of the soul, power of the soul, seeks out various experiences, but not necessarily a personal God. When you look back, well, at least some of us can look back to the 1960s. If you can't look back to it yourself, you can look back to it perhaps by reading about it.
Hold on, I saw this. So it's kind of what Megan points to, I think, when she says just be. Like, I'm not trying to figure out God. I'm just being with God. I'm just letting God, as much as I can, be in me and interact in the world through me. Yeah, she says it right here. Just be. Allow.
You see that it was the time of great experimentation. People were seeking for different experiences, trying to get, at its best, a deeper appreciation of reality. At its worst, other things. And this experimentation of the 1960s and the obsession with phenomena that we...
All right, sorry, I want to keep going to this. Grim, okay. I agree, God lives in the now, but intellectual lies for hours if you want. This is an area where I really disagree with you. I think you came up in a kind of Southern Pentecostalism that was anti-intellectual, and I think we're called to love God with our entire minds. And I think the vanguard of consciousness is in the West, and I do think theology is actually important and propositions matter, like I was saying. Do they matter as much as holiness? No. The intellectual life is ignorance, I think. Okay, back.
We still have now in our own time shows us that a weakened nous is also a nous which is diffuse. By that, I mean that instead of staying where it ought to, which is in the context of the heart, a darkened nous leaves the place where it ought to be and seeks out other experiences which it is not competent to handle.
So that his explanation doesn't match my understanding of diffuse. It's kind of, instead of being localized, it's spread out. So it kind of maps, but and I know where he goes.
To put it in very simple language, the heart opens itself up to things which not only don't heal it, but hurt it further. I think you can put it in language that simple. If we use nous and heart almost.
That reminds me of was without form in the creation.
Synonymously. then we can put it this way.
The spirit was still there, but it was...
Indeed, when the nous is weakened, it is replaced by other powers of the soul.
Key. When the noose is weakened, other strong men come into the house.
Principally
That was a good saying.
by the rational powers of the soul. And
Claire, perk up your ears. Here we go. Memory is the purveyor of reason. This is what I would say. Animesis. I mean, it's what this whole dang, Homer's talking about this, the ancient Greeks, memory. Augustine was about this, memory. If you don't understand that memory is the purveyor of reason, your rationality will be fallen. The noetic, the nous, is preeminent to a fallen rationality. That's what the fallen rationality is, what I call a go-again-elect. Here we go. We're going to keep going.
And we'll speak in a moment about why that's not always, or why that it is not, in fact, a good thing. And then the remark I made about the nous, when it's darkened or weakened, seeks after religion instead of seeking a personal God revealed in Trinity. It seeks after phenomena. It seeks after experiences. You can see.
Which is what we're seeing now. That was, yeah.
That people who have been not taught the Christian faith are very, very hungry and tend to get into all kinds of different areas.
I'm getting the image of hungry, hungry hippos. If you know that game, people that have not been taught the Christian faith, they're hungry, hungry hippos. They're trying to fill that God-shaped hole, that libidinal pursuit of the lack. Just hit those hungry, hungry hippos.
Pseudo-religious areas.
I think he aged himself there.
Which ultimately are not very helpful for them. And that's precisely because the nous, or spiritual intellect, is not functioning properly, or perhaps hardly functioning at all.
So that's what I would make the argument is, if you're not in relation with that thing, and I'm having a hard time calling it a soul, because I feel like the soul is like the deepest part of me. And so this is kind of the vision that I have, is that like super sacred spot that we work to protect. This is what all psychology is all about. Like it's the basic, the way I got, because I don't like psychology, but I was good at it because I could relate to it very easily, in that it's all the mental ways that we use to protect the most sacred thing within us. The most centered, deepest, most real part of us. So I've been thinking a lot, not a lot, but I've had this reoccurrent thought as of late, in that how does the triune God properly integrate the fourth, that is me, into that thing? And I think there's something in that. But it's the more I interact with that part of myself, instead of like caging it off or hiding in it or not letting anyone else see it, the more that this thing within inside me, which may be what he's talking about, the nous, the more the thing wants to get out, right? And I know it's different than the thing that I got caged up in the bag. That is every single time wrapped up in self. And he talks about this later. That's where the pride is. And I would go into the want, like the wanting is the thing. That's the thing I want to see burnt off. I don't want to be a saint, because just in the act of wanting the thing, I've now corrupted it. That's the reaching for the apple when it probably would have been given to us.
So it can be replaced or suppressed by the rational faculty or the rational powers in the human person. And this creates an imbalance in the human person. This part needs to be healed. It's a pathology that needs to be identified.
I feel like there's verses about this. The wisdom of God is folly to those who are perishing, but to us who are being saved, it is a sweet perfume unto eternal life.
Sure is.
Claire, St. Paul's way ahead of you.
Identified and treated and healed. Now to speak about the Logos, the Word, another power of the soul. This is the aspect of the...
And again, this is where I was thinking Christ, the Word made flesh, since eternity.
The inner person of the soul that gives the nous, the spiritual intellect, the power of expression and articulation. The nous perceives, and the Logos sets in order and articulates.
So this is where I was talking about the two different sides of the brain. So I don't know which side it is, but it's probably mapped very much well to the rational side, left brain, right brain side of Ian McGilchrist. Let's do a quick search. I'll do it on my phone. I don't think we have to show it. Yeah, let's do it. Let's go here. This may slow my computer down. So this is language centers of the brain. Broca's and Wernicke's areas of the angular gyrons. Can we share this tab instead? Yes. And then we'll pull this down. Make it smaller so it's bigger on your guys' end. So this is, oddly enough, what gets damaged with years of drinking alcohol in the brain. We call it Wernicke's encephalopathy. So images. Okay. Let's go hearing versus speaking. Centers of the brain, speaking. So there's two different areas that have to communicate. So this is showing it on the same side. I was almost certain it was on the opposite side. Here's an image of it on the neural pathways. Let's see if I can make it bigger. And the brocas. This is showing it all on the left side. I was pretty certain they were on the opposite sides. Maybe I'll do a little bit of research into this a little bit later. We have certain tests for strokes that actually do this. That much more smarter men than I then use that information to determine. Plus, we do imaging. Show share screen. Let's go back to the thing. But anyway, there's different parts of the brain that are for the different types of language. So I found that interesting in this part of the
We can
video.
distinguish here when we're speaking about logos,
but within the same
between
brain.
the power of expression and the rational power, although they are very closely connected. So when you're reading Fathers of the Church, you're going to see in sometimes they'll use the word logos, and they will tie it to the
Corn.
Sorry. Claire, I will say this again. I mean, keep beating that dead horse. You don't understand what this guy's talking about or what I'm talking about, and it's proof in your comments. Like, you have no idea what he's talking about if you make this comment. But keep doing it, I guess. You know, I mean, you got to follow that U-shaped journey all the way down until you die and are reborn.
Insanity, trying the same
part
thing over
which
and
is
over
more
again.
connected with the aspect of articulation, and sometimes they'll tie logos more with the rational part, and if that's the case,
Doesn't seem
they'll
logical.
often use
Okay.
the word
Sorry.
logistikon, not just going to see in sometimes they'll use the word logos, and they will tie it to the
Shoot.
Sorry.
They'll often use the word logistikon, not just logos, but logistikon. And this is the intellectual or rational aspect of the soul. They are, in fact, not exactly the same thing.
See, I thought he said the
because
news was the
the
intellectual.
logos is there to give a voice to the nous. The nous sees, perceives, and intuits, and the logos gives it a voice, articulates, expresses, which is not exactly the same as.
So that's
Right,
almost,
which is why I
you
brought
could
up the
almost
different
map
parts
that,
of the
I
brain.
think, and whatever. Get ready.
People have strokes and have aphasia, and they're not able to speak, but they can hear and understand. And then writing is in a different place too, but not exactly. It's slightly different, but it's in the same area for expressing language, expressive aphasia. And then there's other strokes that cause you to not be able to hear language.
To map and territory. One sees and perceives, one names. And proper naming is the corpus callosum union, proper union between those two things. When the naming is the proper and right, correct representation of the thing perceived and saves the appearances of the name.
The corpus callosum
The
is
name
something
that-
that connects the two hemispheres
And even when
of
it's
the
properly
brain.
named, it can be counterfeited. That's why we have Christ and Antichrist.
The cognitive faculty, the way we more often than
The
not
relationship
understand it
between the
today.
two is where
And
the
so
thing
if you
is.
look at the Fathers of the Church, when you're coming across, this is why I was apprehensive actually to do this presentation, because it can be a little bit confusing. Sometimes logos can refer to the rational or intellectual part, or aspect, and sometimes to the part which is more connected with articulation. But they, in fact, distinguish between the two.
Okay, let's
And
go back. I don't
the
understand.
rational or intellectual presentation, because it can be a little bit confusing, apprehensive actually to do this presentation because it can be a little bit confusing. Sometimes logos can refer to the rational or intellectual part or aspect, and sometimes to the part which is more connected with articulation. But
Okay. Does anybody have any ideas what that distinction means?
Are you still here,
So
Luke?
sometimes it can
That
have
help?
to do with the rational intellectual part, and sometimes it can do with the articulation.
Yeah. So the actual.
I don't know.
So
I'd have to think about that for a while.
the actual.
I don't know what that
act of
distinction is.
so it's the reverse, right? So the process of bringing information in via the senses and then having that thing transformed and brought into our minds, which then I would say brings it into the infinite, right? That connected to the nous, right? Then the opposite process has different pathways. I would think that it's in part because it takes musculature, actual movement of physical things in order to then take the idea and then manifest it into the air quotes real world, into the world of matter, right? We have to move the airwaves, we have to do the things, so it comes through in different pathways. I hope that's helpful for you. So in so doing, and two, I would say, I don't know. My thought process was corruption. And where does the corruption take place of the true? Right? Because it's kind of like us not being able to totally obtain the thing and make it into language or a feeling or the right touch. We're not able to make that thing true. And so it gets corrupted as it goes from the spiritual to the physical. And the idea is to be in fullness, to use your word, right? To be in as fullness as one can be, that is as corrupted the least possible way as it flows through us.
distinguish between the two.
Which I fail at all the time,
nous
by the
was
way.
created, or rather, the
And will
logos
until I
was
die.
created to give the nous a voice. That's my language to make it a little bit more simple. It needs, however, the logos to give a voice to what the nous perceives and not to act independently. Because when the logos, the power of articulation or the power of the rational power, acts independently from the nous, from the heart, it can try to prove or disprove the existence of God on a purely rational basis without any reference to actual experience. So here I'm not saying that we can't engage rational discourse to talk about the existence of God, but that we can't prove the existence of God this way.
Grim, that's exactly. He's talking about your thing. You can have rational discourse, abstraction that is completely disconnected from experience. That's intellectualism. That's a kind of self-righteousness. That's C.S. Lewis's theologian that's wandering around in the gray world in The Great Divorce. That's people that talk about God all the time. And then we'll come to, didn't we say, Lord, Lord, didn't we blah, 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 blah. Didn't I get a PhD in theology and talk
Unembodied
about you all the time
is what I
and
would say. It's
write
not,
books on loving God and evangelism? And he'll say, depart from me, I never knew you, because you didn't actually have an experience of God, because you didn't actually love people, the one another's, giving someone a glass of water, Grim, saying, be well, be warm and well fed, but doing nothing to clothe them or to feed them. James stuff, works, faith and works. If you think you have faith without works, you're lying.
I mean, you could be
way to
deceived.
so-called
You could
prove,
be
if that's the
deceived,
right
too.
term in this case, in fact it's not, is to experience God. And that's what the nous in the heart can do, and does well, when it's illumined and when the heart is purified. Otherwise, the nous is suppressed. It becomes an aspect or power of the soul that loses its proper place, loses.
So the thought I had, Michael Heiser, I fell asleep to last night, talking about the hardening of Pharaoh's heart. And that was the thought I had, is that the nous becomes, because that was something I noticed they didn't offer in his, is the hardening of it. It's not able to be penetrated. It's not able to be, and this is where I think too the diffuseness is a little confusing too, because as the heart grows, it moves into all the dark crevices of our innermost personhood, and it burns away the crap, and then it's able to live through us.
Its power, it's immediately replaced by something else, and replaced by the intellectual or rational side. So actually, that is exactly what we see now. We see that in our own society.
Yeah, so I mean, I think he's just essentially saying faith without works is dead, or words, blessed is not just the hearers only, but the doers. I don't think he's denying, I wouldn't personally deny, because I was just arguing earlier about this with Grimm, I would not deny the life of the mind. And that I think eventually, in the fullness of faith and of knowledge of God, you need proper naming and language. I think that's true. I just think a big error of the objectivist, modernist, rationalist, egoic intellect age of the mind is to prioritize all of that stuff before it prioritizes actual holiness. And it allows this whole inverted, hidden, unconscious.
Okay, let's digest that a little bit.
Actually, that is exactly what we see now.
It's not just the hearers only, but the doers.
That's
I don't think
understandable.
he's denying, I wouldn't personally deny, because I was just arguing earlier about this with Grimm, I would not deny the life of the mind. And that I think eventually, in the fullness of faith and of knowledge of God, you need proper naming and language. I think that's true. I just think a big error of the objectivist, modernist, rationalist.
Okay, objectivist, modernist, rationalist. So this is my understanding of it. So if I get it wrong, please forgive me. But this is the idea that the world is nothing but atoms and molecules, and we are just people that are operating on chemical messages in our brains, and when we mess up, it's because those chemicals are messed up. floating on a little blue marble that is bigger than our brains can actually comprehend through space for no purpose whatsoever.
Egoic intellect, age of the mind is
Okay, I gotta look that word up. Egoic. I'm probably gonna spell it wrong. Egoic. Egoic means relating to or based on the ego, meaning the individual self, the individual sense of self, self-identity, or I. It describes thoughts, actions, and states of mind focused on personal importance, self-interest, and separation from others. I mean, that's what I go against. So let's see how he used it in his sentence.
God. You need proper naming and language. I think that's true. I just think a big error of the objectivist, modernist, rationalist, egoic intellect age of the mind is to prioritize all of that stuff before it prioritizes actual holiness, and it allows this whole inverted, hidden, unconscious lie and hypocrisy is that.
Okay. All right. So, right. So you're fooling yourselves. You're deceiving yourselves in thinking that that is the grand thing of it all, right? Is this understanding of the world that is only on this side of the transformation. The glasses, the remote, but forgets all the stuff that happens when we internalize all the things, including the voice I'm hearing on the screen and the voice you're hearing on the screen through me. That is actually getting inside of us and doing something and being transformed. And then we're deciding whether or not, and you're deciding whether or not to incorporate the things you're hearing somehow, some way into yourself. And if we're incorporating this pneuma that lives within ourselves, that is then able to be, seeds of that are able to flow out of us and through all these physical manifestations of my words passing through the screen into your ear holes, through the chemical pathways. Then that seed gets to be planted, and your pneuma has an opportunity to be softened and to glow brighter and to teach you how to love, really.
You can think that you love, like Grimm said, how do you know that you're actually loving your experience of God versus loving your ideas of your experience of God? It's that distinction. It's the actual holiness. It's the actual self-emptying and love, which is exercised in humility. This is why people talk about the fruit of the Spirit. Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, faithfulness, self-control. If you do not have exercise of those things, and then they're contrasted with the fruit of the flesh, which is like, and I feel like it's so easy to talk about these things. This was actually a text at my wife's parents' church that we were just at the other day. Fits of rage. Do you have fits of rage? What are, I mean, just look it up if you want to. I can't remember them all. Orgies, dissension.
We'll do that. I think the key distinction in those two things is self. When the focus is for us and for our own good. This is what I think Ayn Rand philosophy is so damn gross, because it tries to take a self-centered viewpoint and make it righteous. It all sounds nice. It really does. I'm helping other people. It's admitting the grossest things about myself and calling it righteous. The fact that I would go to a nursing home to read a book to a bunch of old people to help my stuttering and be okay with it being for me only, and that it just accidentally helped other people, that's like, it's like the worst kind of deception. Like it flips it right on his head, and yet it's so freaking close. It's so freaking close. That intent matters. All right, so this is fruits of the flesh. We're going to name them off real quick. Fruits of the flesh. Sexual immorality, idolatry, and hatred. Yeah, sexual immorality is all over the place on why it's. I think it's because, well, I don't think this is here. And then fruits of the spirit, fits of rage and drunkenness. Drunkenness, orgies are also fruits of the flesh. And then that is counter to love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control.
Arguing that it lists the fruit of the spirit, Galatians 6, right? And then it contrasts it with the fruit that's not of the spirit. If you have, this is how you test yourself and take the log out of your own eye. If you are frequently subject to fits of rage or jealousy or anger, bitterness, all that kind of stuff, which we all kind of have. I mean, we all have that to varying degrees, but if you are characterized by those things more than you are by the fruit of the spirit, you should probably check yourself before you wreck yourself, no matter what you think you know about God.
Well, I think that's funny. I think this is where I get a little bit pulled back, because it's saying that I'm doing something other than just being. Because I think that's where the flip happens. If I'm the one doing it, then it's for naught. Just like me caging the cat of nine tails. That in a way of me caging that is me saying that I'm doing that. I would like to get to the place where I could just be, and that sucker would just be gone. But it's weird because if I'm being honest, there's an ickiness in that thing that I somehow relate to, and I don't want to see it gone. This is that demon right outside the doorway that I've talked about before. I don't know if I can ever do that.
Right.
Society, we see that in the way we learn. We see that, unfortunately, in the way we educate. This is something that needs to be corrected, because, in fact, what we are often teaching our children to do is to disengage from the heart, to disengage, to allow the nous to be silenced and powerless, and to bring something in its place which had another role. We're going to see in a moment exactly what the role of the intellectual or rational side was to be. And we should know that every good book in Orthodox dogmatic theology does not start with proofs for the existence of God.
Uh-oh, Claire.
You can see this. We have never started from this place because it is starting from a place that does not reflect wholeness of the inner person. When you start from this, you are already encouraging, in a sense, the lack of functionality in a human person. You're putting the emphasis on essentially what we would refer to as a kind of an imbalance or a pathology that occurs in the human.
Integration, if you have integration, starting from this knowledge, then you don't have divided man. Divided man is what I was just talking about, all this stuff. Being able to live in a realm of your egoic intellect, where you think you have, where you're living in your ideas about God rather than a direct experience of God, that noetic insight, the nous, and you deceive yourself. You suppress the truth and righteousness, and you deceive yourself in unrighteousness. I mean, these are all just like, I mean, these are verses just straight out of the Bible, and these are just explanations. These are just philosophical frameworks on what the text is saying. And I mean, you can say, well, I don't think that's what the text is saying. It makes a heck of a lot of sense to me, because it's saying it's rooted in the person. Like, this is why my personalism is like, I'm so stuck on it, is because when you root it in the person, of which your body is part of that, and Jordan Peterson's act as if, you can't live in abstract, disembodied land. And this is what O.G. Rose was talking about with Jedediah, about the tertiary logic of uncertainty because it allows for living. When you're uncertain, you have to live. You can't just stay static in your right answers. Onward.
Human person, it's not the way we want to be. But when you encourage...
I'm going to redo that. I think that needs some digestion. I get what he's saying about living in the static of your right answers. I've lived long enough to know that a truth that I knew was a truth, it stayed a truth, but it wasn't this rigid, sharp-cornered thing. It was clay. It was more, because I don't want to say it's malleable or that it's not. It's kind of like when I say Paul's sermons sometimes just cut me so gently. They're still cutting me. There's still truth there, but they're not this blunt object of like,
it in the person. Like, this is why my personalism is like, I'm so stuck on it, is because when you root it in the person, of which your body is part of that, and Jordan Peterson's act as if, you can't live in abstract, disembodied land. And this is what O.G. Rose was talking about with Jedediah, about the tertiary logic of uncertainty
tertiary logic of uncertainty. I don't even know how to rightly explain that. Like, maybe somebody else has got something here. We are wanting our language. 1108. So this was is the belief of, is this it? That is a belief of nonsensical or Occultic unknown. Occultic unknown.
Because it allows for living. When you're uncertain, you have to live. You can't just stay static in your right answers.
I can't stay static, but a lot of times I can't move. And I certainly can't live. When I'm uncertain, I'm like, whoa. I got to figure this thing out. I got to find a pathway forward. I got to understand where the variables are going to like kill me. And the more uncertain it is, the more I have an inability. That's not always true, though, either. I should say I would say I have more of a tendency, the more uncertain things are, to revert to that thing than to this thing. Because I don't know. And as much as that thing has caused pain in the past, it still has given me a sense of protecting me. And if I'm being honest, this thing calls me to go hang on a cross. And there's that self again. There's the self again. Even though I know that this is way more beautiful and way more joyful.
Onward.
In person, it's not the way we want to be. But when you encourage people to do that, we normalize what in fact the fathers of the church consider an illness. And we should be very much aware of that tendency. We're not immune to it in the Orthodox Church, because when other people engage us that way, we tend to want to respond in exactly the same way.
And guess what? That was Peugeot with Gavin Ortland.
Yeah.
This is Eastern Rite Orthodoxy. This is what I often call Eastern Rite Orthodoxy, is people who convert to Orthodoxy because because they see it as the church with the right answers, which, well, listen, I did it. If that's where you're coming from, it's what you have to do. But then you still live in that spirit once you are Orthodox, and your whole framework and thing is to get people to convert to the right rational answers within the church, rather than the integrated fullness of life, which is lived holiness. They're different things. They are
Which I think you've done a beautiful job with doing this, by the way.
different things. You know, I mean, it just, okay.
And we should be very much aware of that tendency. I'll encourage people to do that. We normalize what in fact the fathers of the church consider an illness. And we should be very much aware of that tendency. We're not immune to it in the Orthodox Church, because when other people engage us that way, we tend to want to respond in exactly the same way. And we've got to be very much aware of this.
This is why I say you can be right and be wrong, or be wrong and be right. If you're right about all your facts and logic, but the way that you are right is relationally wrong, then you're not operating in love, and it will not allow the I, thou, the person you're interacting with will not feel cared for. Like they won't care. They won't feel what you say, or they won't hear what you say until they know how much you care, whatever that is. If what you're saying isn't nested in and rooted in love for the other person, which I think is coming from that inner light and the nous, rather than just the intellect, because the intellect is just operating and converting everyone to your ideas in and of itself. When those two things are integrated, then you're operating in love for people, and you're being Christ to the world and you're self-emptying. And then people feel loved and magic happens because that's the miracle. That's Christ.
See, and I would make the argument, and maybe he said this and I missed it, but I would make the argument that both those things are not of myself. Both those things are from beyond me. My job is to stay the hell out of the way.
Christ in me stuff.
A sick logos is a symptom of a sick or a lost nous. Here's the way I express it. These are my words. A sick logos is capable of unintelligent intelligence. A sick logos is capable of unintelligent intelligence.
Egoic intellect, smart dumb. A sick logos is capable of.
Remember, egoic was the I, me.
Unintelligent intelligence. Yeah.
It has intelligence, but disconnected from the nous, it's not intelligent intelligence. It's unintelligent intelligence.
It's the spirit behind the thing. And people can see that and recognize that. And we're attracted to people that have that. We want to be around it. And I think the thing that is the most damning is when people see it in you and then they're betrayed when the thing gets out of the cage. Because it's like they had a hope of getting something. And once again, I got in the way.
And disconnected from the heart and from the nous, it becomes immediately susceptible to arrogance. And I don't think I need to elaborate on that point for you.
Pride. I mean, seriously, everyone should be prayerfully trying to root out and tear out every ounce of pride in their life. Because we love to focus on all sorts of other sins, but like the pride of being right? So good. Oh, it tastes so good. Just shove it in your mouth. Like the marshmallow bunny thing. Just shove that pride in.
It
It's not even just the pride of being right. It's all sorts of pride. It's not just about being right. It's about what you've accomplished. Your role in participating in the thing, even. The being proud of being a cracked vessel. Like, that is the root of it all. And this, I think, is a case for the depravity argument, the total depravity argument. I've ran into, and I don't know if I'm going to study his work, but Eckhart, he talks about emptying himself. Because even the most sustained, like, pious monastery monks struggled with the pride even after they were doing the thing, because, like, and this is why I am just so concerned with any part of myself being a part of the good. because I'm so easily tempted with that pride.
Cannot be cured, the logos, without the illumination of the nous and the purification of the heart.
Phlebas, you're so, even us Orthodox can fall into this when others tempt us. What else do you want him to say? He's trying to warn his tribe of their own temptations to pride. I mean, he obviously doesn't think that he's right about this structuring of nous, logos, pneuma, and how those relate to the scriptures.
Fair,
otherwise,
it takes longer to
he's not even capable of having an opinion.
Just to chew it.
And so he thinks that's right, and he thinks the Orthodox teaching about that is right. And so when rationalists are tempting you to engage in rationalism rather than a humble submission to your noetic insights, connected with the holiness of your heart, which is what he's trying to do, I don't know what you want him.
I'll speak for a moment about the spirit, pneuma. The spirit, or pneuma, as an aspect or power of the soul, is not so much a separate part as much as the grace of God that permeates every aspect of the inner person. The grace of God that permeates every aspect of the human person. It gives vitality to every.
And sorry, Calvinists, that's just like, if you distinguish things into like common grace, if you even have the term common grace, you don't believe what he just said. You can't. Let's go back.
The grace is the spirit, or pneuma, as an aspect or power of the soul, is not so much a separate part as much as the grace of God that permeates every aspect of the inner person.
Okay, so I do not see, he tries to explain it later, but I do not see how that is antithetical to the Calvinist argument. As long as there's breath within me, I'm living under some degree of grace. I have an opportunity. I have an opportunity to participate. I don't see how that's antithetical to the Calvinist position.
The grace of God that permeates every aspect of the human person. It gives vitality to everything. Even when I say it, it's less than accurate, because of course the grace of God has a personal connection. The grace of God is uncreated, and because it refers back to his person.
I've never actually thought about the grace of God being uncreated. That's interesting and smacks true, but I don't think I've ever made that mental connection before, even listening to it before. That's interesting.
Grace is not an it, but if I called grace a he in English, it would sound strange. So I'm using the word it, but I just want to qualify my use of the word it. It gives vitality to all the other aspects of the human person. It demonstrates that we have the image of God as an innate aspect of humanity. It does not work against the will of the person. Pneuma.
Okay, I didn't quite get that. Because if we're talking about the will of me, of Scott, this cat of nine tails back here, everything that I've experienced of God is antithetical to that. That thing just wants to devour for its own purposes. It doesn't want to share. Outside of that Ayn Rand idea. because I get to get what I want without looking like I'm that. I get to be a wolf in sheep's clothing.
Or spirit is often used as a synonym for nous. In fact, in Holy Scripture, when St. Paul is using the word pneuma and referring to the human person, more often than not, or in his use of it, it is actually not so much the grace of God, so much as quite simply the heart or the nous. It's a reference to the enduring and deepest aspect of the human person. St. Paul doesn't mean, again, to make the spirit a separate part of the human person, but is simply referring to the deepest aspect. So for me, I find it helpful to see that spirit in St. Paul.
Common grace is saying God is momentarily kind to those he has determined to everlasting misery. I think that's accurate to Calvinism, and I think it sucks. I think.
Now, me personally, I think that spark that is within every one of us that provides us to have life gets taken away. It's not, I personally wouldn't think it's eternal suffering. I think it's just the end. Because the spark gets taken away. You've rejected it. You've had a lifetime to accept it. And you said no, thank you. And so so it goes back to itself. God removes it. He gives us what we want. He lets go.
And I don't think it I don't think it portrays God well, and I don't think it's true. All right.
Paul is what the fathers who come after him mean that part. Doesn't mean again aspect or the nous. It's a reference to the enduring and deepest aspect of the human person. St. Paul doesn't mean again to make the spirit a separate part of the human person, but is simply referring to the deepest aspect. So for me, I find it helpful to see that spirit in St. Paul is what the fathers who come after him mean when they say nous. And that ties the two together, Scripture and the fathers. Again, here's an example of their saying the same thing, but having a certain preference for particular lexicon, for choice of language. Now, I realize that what I've said could be just a little bit confusing, and that is why I'm a little bit concerned about saying the next thing I'm about to say, but I'll try to draw it all together at the end. There's another way in the Fathers of understanding the inner person when you are discussing the powers of the soul. Some Fathers take the following approach. They talk about the intelligent aspect, logos or logistikon. Then they talk about what I will translate as the desiring aspect, epithemikon in Greek, and another aspect, themikon, of forceful feelings and emotions. These are sometimes called in the patristic literature, the desiring aspect, appetitive, and the aspect or powers that are connected with strong feelings and emotions, irascible.
I love how he smiled when he said irascible. This is something I've actually thought about doing a live stream about this, but I've forgotten about it. So I'm just going to let this play now. But when he's talking about these passions, this part is phenomenal. I think it's really good because God does not want passions, like passions in the sense of like fallen, misdirected emotion and energy is bad. I think we all know that. But like God doesn't want us to be dispassionate. We're not like Stoics or like modern conceptions of Stoicism. Ancient conceptions of Stoicism is just like introducing a buffer so that you're not reacting emotionally and passionately out of your passions. This is the whole reason where you can be angry but not sin. Because you can be angry. You can have the emotion of anger. To deny that you're angry is to lie. So you should have the emotion of anger, but then you shouldn't sin with that anger. This is the part that he's talking about, and I think it's brilliant because I think God, because I like emotion. I want to baptize the emotions. I think it's a really great. So here,
I do not like emotions. But sometimes I feel that in order to allow this nous to live within my life, the emotions have to stay in that thing. And I know that's not right. It's the argument if someone were to say I could do a good job if I just don't care, or the art of not giving a fuck, to use more popular language, right? It's that disassociation. And I would like, and I know I would be a fuller human being and quite possibly more rightly walking with the Spirit if I were able to incorporate that part of it.
I'm going to let it play and I'll be back.
But when you use that kind of terminology, I fear that you lose people quickly. So I've called it the desiring aspect and the aspect connected with forceful feelings and emotions. Here's what we need to say about all three aspects. We've discussed the logos in some detail already. So let's speak about the other two aspects. The desiring aspect, or powers of the soul, and the powers of the soul connected to forceful feelings and emotions. They are God-given. God set this in the human person for a reason. We don't want to take those aspects and stamp them out or remove them.
I've come to a place where I can't trust them, though. And this is where Grimm falls in for me as such an important character in my life right now, is that for one, he's one of the first people I've seen actually acknowledge the thing that I have known for a long time, is that we're being manipulated. Like in a very true sense. And that it's everywhere now. And so we can't trust them. So again, we lock them in the cage. Because we're always being hijacked, for whatever the thing. A vote, purchasing of Pond Scum. What was that movie where the guy came from the past? And he ends up tasting the creamy, buttery. Honey, what was the name of that movie? The one where he's selling the Pond Scum. What was it? Meg Ryan was in it. She was a marketing person. Leap Year? Leap Year? She says it's called Leap Year. Guy comes from the past. She puts him in a commercial. And he says, no wonder you're miserable with yourself. You're selling this Pond Scum to the unknowing public.
It was Hugh Jackman.
Hugh Jackman, yes. He was wearing the outfit. So I can't trust. The point of the matter is I can't trust the feelings anymore. The things that are God-given to be used as a guidepost are disoriented in of themselves. At least my relationship to that is disorientated.
Instead, we want to see them transformed. Without the desiring aspect, we would not desire holiness. We would not have desire of any type. However wounded and deformed by sin, those same powers of the soul can manifest themselves as jealousy, lust, and many other related passions. Forceful feelings and emotions are God-given. We need them. Without them, we would have no revulsion for sin. We would not be repelled by it. That is a forceful emotion. And yet, wounded and distorted, the thymikon becomes destructive, a destructive and self-centered anger, one that seeks the suppression or destruction or exploitation of the other person. All three aspects, logos, the desiring aspect, and the aspect or powers associated with forceful feelings and emotions, are, as I mentioned, a God-given. They are all three susceptible to the passions, and the latter two most especially. Beginners in the spiritual life are thus well advised to simply cut the passions off when they express themselves. And here, for example, if we talk about anger, yes, it is possible to be angry and not to sin. We see this in the life of the Lord when he is expelling the vendors and the money changers from the temple. You can't get away from the fact that he is angry. He's not negotiating with them. He's turning over their tables. He's formed a whip to push them out. What other word could you give for it other than he's angry with them? But he's not sinning. It is a prophetic anger. When was the last time that you and I had an expression of anger that was 100% prophetic?
I usually fool myself into thinking that, which is why the shame comes in after.
And had no self-pity, was not self-centered.
There you go, Chad.
Well, was there ever a time that we had anger that was not self-centered and didn't have a certain amount of violence in it or self-pity? So we're well advised, especially at the beginning, simply to cut off these passions so that they don't do damage to ourselves and to others. But the reality is that they need to be rehabilitated and not suppressed, because the suppression of all of these powers of the soul, even the ones that have gone wrong, if you suppress them entirely, it gives way to other illnesses and even other kinds of passions.
Yes. And I said this last night in Neil's thing, which I'll maybe finish today, because I watched part of it. But
I should check the comments on that.
the cave you fear to enter holds the answer that you seek. You can't just suppress it. You can't just sweep it under the rug. You can't just ignore it. What you don't feel, you don't heal. And you can't change what you don't accept. Like, totally. Like, these will come out sideways if you don't
That last one is why I recoil at certainty.
deal with them.
And so when we are talking about the passions, we should not be thinking about cutting them off and suppressing them or obliterating them. We should think in terms of their transformation. The transformation leads to a balanced, healthy human person who has logos or logistikon, who has strong desire, and who can also have force.
So then again, so it speaks to the cat of nine tails that I got back there, and it being transformed. But is that me? I don't know. Because where I'm currently at is that I think that it's in the relationship. And so there's a way for this thing to be transformed and be incorporated into the group, but not necessarily me.
Emotions, which is to say, they are not emotionally flat. A healthy person is not emotionally flat. And that's what happens if you take these powers and simply obliterate them. In their original form, they are what certain fathers of the church would call natural energies. They are God-given. In that form, they are not distorted. They are allowing us to be full and healthy human persons. But natural energies become passions when they are twisted and they are self-centered. When we are wounded by sin, that is part of the soul that is profoundly affected, and the natural energies don't express themselves as natural energies anymore. They express themselves as passions. When we are very, very young, we learn the wrong use of the desiring and forceful powers of the soul through a wrong use of those powers in others. It's so difficult for parents to reflect on the fact that we have passed on this wrong information to our own children. And they have come to a point of thinking that these powers are to be used in the wrong way. And so we learn the wrong use of the desiring and forceful powers through a wrong use of the powers by others, and also because of sin in general that has an impact on the human person. The passions need to be redirected. They need to be schooled through obedience to the commandments, but they also need to be denied. When they are denied, they slowly wither, revealing the original natural energies which can be transformed and which can be channeled into real virtues.
I really like that picture. It's the idea of not watering the relationship and it just dies. Not paying it attention. Not participating.
Virtues, therefore, do not appear without the grace of God and without self-denial. The grace of God becomes especially available to us in the sacraments and through prayer and asceticism, and that is what we're going to talk about the next time that we are together.
And that was Father Maxim.
Okay. So I'm going to do what Luke did. There's 6 folks here. Let's post her up. See what you guys have to say. I'd be curious to know if somebody wants to play the role of the small intestines and see what gets absorbed. In many ways, that's probably the harder part. Maybe a group increased surface area of the small intestines.
Yeah, you need somebody from a different angle, because otherwise, whatever I say is just colonizing someone's mind. By the way, I don't think I can convince you of anything. I stood clear on that. I said a lot in the chat, and I know you were focusing on understanding, but the idea that I don't think anybody can be convinced through logic and facts. But I do believe that the Holy Spirit is who does the changing in your heart that convinces you, you know? So tradition wise, I can't convince you of anything. I could just state the theology as I understand it and why it makes sense to me. And if it resonates, then great. If it doesn't, then it doesn't. Luke does the same thing. I think when I'm talking, when I'm saying something, I'm asking for proof of what he means when he's interpreting it the way he's interpreting it. Whereas he's saying it's like these matter of fact, like it's the knowing, it's the knowing of the knowing. You can't know and not know. It's the Christ and the Antichrist. It's like, it's so, I understand it's hard to track him, but I understand his heart's in the right place. I just don't merge this idea of me actually being Christ, even in this unusual symbolic way. I see Christ in me, but being Christ-like, I see, the church being Christ. Well, the church reflects Christ through their being, through their doing, but like this, and that's why the whole energies thing is very hard, because whether people want to admit it or not, from the East, the energies and all that stuff was a very much part of their formation. So it kind of reminds me of when the Judaizers were trying to merge Jewish tradition with Christian tradition. It's like, this is what their formation was. So they thought this was right. And Paul's like coming out there going, no, right? Or James is dealing with guys that say, oh, I'm a Jew, I believe in Christ, but I'm a Jew and I'm good. No, show me your works, right? So like they're calling out these different things where they're bringing in these ideas from the outside to what Christ was conveying and representing and accomplishing. And so, but again, it would be nice to sit down, probably keep it small, like Luke, you, me, just to keep it simple. But on the other side of it, it would be nice to have somebody that actually knows Greek and Hebrew and can use the resources to pull up. So when we both have questions or we both want to ask questions, we can both get confirmation. Now, I could use logos to do it, but I just don't want.
What's the pushback? I still don't know what it is you're pushing back against, Brett.
Yeah, I would say I'm a little lost too.
Well, that guy is merging. It's so funny because you can see some of his Protestant. I feel like he had to have had some Protestant roots to him.
The guy as in the priest in the video?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because it seemed like he was merging some of his feelings about what he feels makes sense, which is crazy because we're talking about feelings. But like it seems like there were contradictions in what he was saying. It seemed like, or maybe it was when Luke was describing what he was saying and how he was understanding it. But it just didn't make sense to say that this idea of logos is more than just a word. Now, I understand we have languages, and I understand we can only understand languages the way we understand linguistics. But my issue is that what John was doing in 1:1 was he was playing on creation, and he was using the word logos, meaning like the scriptures, the word of God that was passed down. In the beginning was the word, meaning he was there from the beginning. And he's playing with this idea of Christ being there from eternity past. And he's saying, and God dwelled among us. He was with us and dwelled among us. So the word tabernacled with us. And so he's playing in a beautiful way of writing, but logos always meant word or scripture. That's what it meant. But we've morphed this into when John is using this symbolism and make it, it's like, yes, the word of God is God. I mean, it is God in the sense that what he's communicating to us through a divine revelation and what has been passed down, what the Holy Spirit's
Do
protected.
you
Go ahead.
think that the priest was saying that the word of God wasn't God, or so
He was saying
your question?
logos, the word logos was what? Intellect or knowledge? What was he saying? I forget how he said it. He changed the definition at the beginning.
To what?
You'd have to go back to the beginning.
Well,
Al went to the original video and said it was at the 6-minute timestamp.
So it's not. It's the fact that his interpretation of John 1:1 is different to yours.
No, it's the fact that he's literally using the word logos, not even talking about John in his first verse, and already making a presupposition on the word logos and carrying it to a different definition, and then supplanting it in this idea of it's like he's saying don't be intelligent but yet be knowledgeable. Like I don't what
I genuinely, Brett, I'm asking questions, but I think I agree with you more than I'm asking questions to make sure that you're.
I know you play devil's advocate all the
No,
time.
I'm not playing devil's advocate. I'm trying to understand you.
I
That's
understand.
what
I
I'm
know.
trying to
These
do.
are good questions. I'm not busting your balls.
But Scott was gonna say something before I interrupted him.
well, so I'm a little lost on the frustration. For me, you almost hit it right on the head when you said he tabernacles with us. And if we are the new temple and Christ lives within us, my real big thing is what tradition shows that manifestation and that transformation in the fullest.
So here's the question: are we merging him living in us with him being us?
So right, and that's where I was kind of pushing back to the thing behind over here, and how much of that is me. Go ahead, Tay.
No, I was just I'm I'm happy every time you bring up Kurama, the ninth tail fox, has an example to explain theological things. The anime nerd in me jumps for joy.
That was one of my favorite things I did with my son was go through that series.
Oh,
Yeah.
so good.
But it just in my mind it's so perfectly like encapsulates all the outright shit in my life that I don't like about myself, that I found, that I've been given eyes to see, and I want it gone. Right?
Do you think it'll ever be gone?
I think it has to be for me to be in the presence of God.
Exactly. And when are you going to be in the presence of God?
So that's the thing. I think the more we walk, the more and this is why I describe it as a pathway up.
Mhm.
Like the U-shaped journey that Luke's talking about is the part where those things within me that should be shed are revealed.
Right.
But then as we go up the mountain, it's the valley of the shadow of death and the mountain of prosperity, right? To then go worship. Like those things get burnt off. And where I feel like I am the most lukewarmness is that I don't want some of these things to be burnt off.
Mm-hmm.
I hold on to them and I rationalize them and I do all the things to protect them. Because in the past, they have given me a replica of the real.
Hmm.
So let me ask you this. So the way I see it, right, and the way I understand it, is this sanctification thing that we're talking about is a process that we go through life, right? And we aren't going to be fully, right, sanctified, right, the full completion until we're before the Father, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the fact that my heart even cares about these things, that I agree with you. It's a true humility to see that I've got this inner desire, these things that I just don't want to let go of. Now I can let go of some pretty significant things, right? It's like, let's say we'll use a modern sin of porn, right? So I can let go of that, right? And maybe he gives me victory over that, right? And I can kind of walk in a good place with that, let's say. And that goes a good 10 years, it's like he's given me victory over it. But the idea that I'm never, ever, ever going to look at that again, the idea that I'm past it and I've climbed that rung on the ladder and I'm never going back down is where the lack of humility comes into my sinful nature.
Yeah, I think that's not fair. Calling that a lack of humility is very Protestant coded.
Well,
Uh,
explain to me how you would say
can
that
I
you'll
can I just
never look
answer?
at that
Can I
again.
just answer first before?
Yeah,
Let me
yeah,
explain
yeah.
what I meant first before you interrupt. I think it's very Protestant coded because of our lack of saints. There is theosis is a big factor in what attracts a lot of people to orthodoxy, and that is the idea that you can become a saint in this dispensation. There is,
Right.
I think, that different framing changes, and if you're imposing your frame onto the orthodox, you're going to see them as being prideful. But if you listen to them in the frame they're presenting themselves in, then you see them as being trying to strive for godliness.
The issue I have, I guess, is the way we lift up people from the past that seemingly lived really great lives and holding them up higher than us. Now, we would agree there's probably people that are walking a little bit more holy than us, but the idea that they don't have a sinful nature, that they just resonated to a new illuminated path that is beyond sin, I think I don't think it's helpful, because I think what ultimately it does is and I understand they're not deifying the saints, but they're propping up man, which is obviously not, what does he say?
So this is my big fear. I was going to mention it. It's if that thing's still inside of me, have I been born again? Am I that new creature?
Well, and this is the thing. The difference is, am I going to lean into this sin? Am I going to do it and say, I know it's wrong, I don't care? Or am I sliding into this temptation over and over again, and I have a guilt, I have a disgust, I like he's working this out in me. And eventually I do believe you can get victory, but also this is one of the reasons why I like the Ragamuffin gospel, because that man, he knew Christ in a way that was very special. It was the warm side of Christ, very Evo Christ, right? Um, the condemnation really was not, it was like all people, no matter where they are, so there is a, in that book, it's very Arminian, but the point was that this guy, even to his death, struggled with alcoholism. But to say that him getting up and preaching that he didn't love God, that he didn't hate the fact that he struggled with alcohol,
No one's
and that
saying that.
well, but that's my point is that it's similar to when, let's use like a Pentecostal framework. You know, when you get baptized, you're going to receive the Holy Spirit. And then you get baptized and you don't feel any different. The sin is still there, right? So like the idea of I'm going to turn my life over to God, I'm going to say the words, right? We would all agree that's hokey pokey. But the idea is that once in my heart, I really surrender and yield to him, right? The conviction that I have in my sin is how I have the assurance that I'm on the right path. Because if I didn't care at all, if I didn't care about any of this stuff, and I just said, it
Yes,
is what it is.
there's the caring. The caring's important. The caring's big. The caring's massive. It's similar to what B said in the chat about just realizing uh that you're prone to being prideful is a step in just getting past that. But the caring is not all there is. You can't live on the caring because at some point you're going to, I'm thinking of Romans 8, where I do the things that I don't want to do, and the things that I want to do, I do not do. Woe is me. Who's going to free me from this? Like, praise to Jesus Christ. You guys know the verse. But the point is that that struggle is constant. You do have to keep examining your motives, even about the caring, because at some point I can speak to myself. I'll speak for myself. I have been at points where I've used the caring about not wanting to do the sin as be a justification, as okay, this is at least a good place that I feel as your word was confirmed. Yet, yes, but I'm still called to be like Christ. And that call to be like Christ doesn't stop as just wanting to be like Christ. It's actually being like Christ. And like Scott said, those things that I don't want to kill that are part of my meaning making framework that have afforded me an access to reality that I thought was reality, but turned out was just a simulacra of reality. Those things that I don't want to like kill, I have to, and I don't want to kill them, but I do have to kill them, and that battle is constant throughout your Christian journey. And I think it's good to leave room for people to lament and to like Scott's been doing the last few streams is just wrestling deeply with okay, which part of this is me, and if this is this me that I have to kill, is this the me that I want to keep? And that question is important. And we can't just paper over it by saying, oh, as long as you want to be more like Christ, you should feel assured.
See, this is why I think the systematic theology is the most appropriate, because for me to understand my nature does free me in a sense, because I know what he did, because I know my nature and I know Christ's nature. He's the perfect. I'm not. Of him doing what he did is forgiven me forgiveness for the sins in the past and the sins in the future. Now, it doesn't mean, like Paul said, does this mean that we should let grace abound all the more in sin? Let it not be so, right? So he's not saying that just because you have this, you understand this or whatever, that you can just go on sinning. That's not what he's saying.
It's not
But
just sinning. It's
well, all right,
even
but
doing good. Doing good with the wrong motive is a sin, and those are the parts that Scott and Olsen in the last stream. What wrestling is like. Okay, there's more responsibility on us than I think you're affording currently, from the sound of it.
no,
It's there is a
yeah,
go on.
I recognize that. Let me clarify too. My motive, when I talked about my motive, it doesn't mean that little percentage of me helping that little old lady get across the street. We were talking about that analogy. Um, it may be tainted, but it doesn't mean it's equivalent to sin or equivalent to in the real sense of the law, right? Like, yeah, maybe I want people to see me helping the little old lady out. Well, that's not what's the sin in trying to act like that. I'm not lying. I'm not killing anybody. You know, I mean, I'm actively participating in giving somebody a hand. But if my motive is for the strict fact that I'm wanting people to notice this,
Then
so
it's
I
a
can,
sin.
Curry. Well, what sin is it? Which one?
Pride.
No, pride's not a sin.
Pride goes before the fall.
Yeah, but it's not a sin. We have 10 commandments, right?
Yeah,
That are
it's putting yourself
You
before
think those
God.
10 things are the only sins in the brother? Boy, have
well.
I got news for you.
I think that every one of the sins that are listed in usually your 7 deadly sins theology usually can be probably extrapolated from the 10 commandments.
Let's just stick to the two that Christ gave us. Love God, love people.
Right.
You're not loving God correctly if your service of others is not for in
God.
service of God.
The analogy that we were using is I wasn't even thinking I was looking for currying favor. I was just doing it. And the analogy was, oh, see, you can do good. And I'm like, yeah, but I don't think psychologically you're equipped with truly knowing your psyche the way you think you do.
Well, you can. That's what
So
you know it more and more the more you spend time with God. That's what
Yeah.
happens. It
I
Yeah.
can
reveals to
say
you just how
I'm
sharp
saying the
your heart
best.
is.
So here's my point. My point is my best good with the best intentions I possibly can say, right? That I possibly can believe isn't even close to the equivalent of God's good. So the idea that I'm saying I'm doing good or that there isn't something corrupt in whatever I'm doing in some fashion, okay, is illogical to me.
Yes, agreed. Does that mean we should be as corrupt as can be, as you said
No,
earlier?
that's what I
No,
that's what I
exactly.
said.
And
That's
that's
why
the
I'm
point we're
saying
making.
the idea, though, this is why total depravity, the actual language of total depravity, is not
You're
helpful.
still defending this. This is not a conversation about Calvinism. I understand you're a Calvinist, so you can only speak from the position that you're coming from.
Yeah.
But the point, the conversation currently is around sanctification. That's what we're discussing. And sanctification is an ongoing process of improving very tiny little bit and being a little bit less dirty and a little bit less dirty and a little bit less dirty, while still seeing just how filthy you are compared to, you're still dirty rag, you're still menstrual cycle rags compared to the holiness of God. But you feel the dirtiness and you want to become more like Christ, and just a little blood removed is worth celebrating. And a little bit feeling the weight of of your own sin and unrighteousness is to be one of the biggest sign of Christian life well lived, because we're supposed to be constantly getting a little bit cleaner.
Yeah. Continued growth. We gotta be continuing to grow. And my I guess the fundamental question is how much of myself has to burn away in order for me to be in that relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Like I told somebody the other day, you remember the scene from Wolverine where he's trying to save Jean and he's just got pieces of his flesh coming off of his face. Like I got to be stripped down, and it's not like this isn't unknown. This is how they do it in the military. They strip your psyche all the way down till there's nothing left. And so I ask myself, in what little corner and crack of my inner self do I got more doo-doo that needs to get removed? Because it's
there's
a
always going to
temple
be
for God.
there's always going to be doo-doo that needs to be removed.
I know, but that's what I'm looking for. And one of the bigger pieces is this thing I'm talking about back here. Is what do I do with that thing? If there is even a role for me to participate in doing something with it. Because every now and again, that little sucker gets out and it causes massive problems. And it almost always comes out at these like pivotal turning points. And I think I've shared with people that like my biggest fear is that in the selfish act of letting that thing out, there aren't others that get to experience the joy of God. And I am going to be held account for that.
So the understanding of atonement has to do with the fact that I know God sees me, the Father sees me in a way as if he sees Christ's righteousness. That's the exchange. My sin, his righteousness. So, but me living here in this world and having the conviction that you're talking about is the constant battle, the constant struggle that's always going to be there. It's always going to be there. And a great example is when Paul is talking about the thorn in his side. He said, I prayed 3 times to have this thorn in my side removed. It was some stumbling block. We don't exactly know what it was.
Yeah.
And he didn't remove it. So he became content with the struggle that he has, and it is what it is, and he accepted it. Now, I'm not saying if you're an alcoholic, you should just accept that you're an alcoholic. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that I'm leaving open for the possibility for somebody to struggle with their sin to the very end. And it's okay because of what Jesus did for me. And it's okay because the Father doesn't see me like that.
It's
Now,
okay ultimately in the sight of God.
That's a good point, sir.
We have been made righteous in the sight of God. There is no argument there. No one's disputing that. But once you do become a Christian, it never feels okay. It feels like there's a constant dying to yourself.
yeah.
That needs to happen, particularly if you're aware of the parts of you that needs to die. A lot of the times we're not, but if you're aware of it, that makes it. It feels like you're wrestling with God. You feel like Jacob, like now I have to, and then if that's not a part of me, then what is me? And and that's how we become more like Christ, and more of us die. We must become less. He must become more.
Yeah, I just don't think it's a linear thing. I think it's more of not a U shape, more like a roller coaster shape. Because you're going to have peaks and valleys in your life. You're going to go through valleys, even if that's why I didn't like the prosperity gospel. The idea that once you become a Christian, everything's going to be fine. It's not going to be fine. Actually, it gets worse. Newsflash, people that aren't Christian, why does it get worse? And what I mean by worse is, I mean that you're literally going to now see eyes differently. Everything is going to be seen differently. It's going to be through a different lens altogether. And I'm going to care about the things that I know God cares about. But I'm not going to ever live up to the full potentiality of how Christ was able to see this world and Christ was able to behave. I can do the best I can.
It's
I can
not
try.
the option isn't die in your sin or become Christ. Those aren't the only two.
What do you say? Okay, pull that apart.
The option is not to die in your sin and become more and more sinful, or to become the Son of God, like perfect the way he was and able to
Yeah.
discern right and wrong.
Maybe do me a favor, frame it differently so I can understand what you mean by that.
I'm saying that it sounds like your pushback seems to be that the people are expecting Christians to be perfect and remain perfect.
No,
And that's a journey.
I'm saying that when people use the term, being born again, as if it literally is going to make all things great.
Okay.
Like it's going to be a joyful journey. And then you have theologies that say you're always moving up closer to Christ. Like there's this ascendance and I'm not saying that you won't grow closer to Christ. I'm just saying that every time you do hit those valleys, sometimes he's pulling on something else in your life that he wants to reveal to you about your life to improve on. So you'll have these, yeah, right. But the idea that I'm accepting the fact that I'm a sinner by nature is not in tension with the fact that God sees me not like that. That's the thing. You know, the idea that if you're going through life and you're saying, eventually when I do get God, I'm going to have victory over X, Y, and Z. You're holding this idea that what he did isn't sufficient. So I have to do
No,
more. I have
no,
to do more. I have to keep doing this. I have to keep doing that.
no, no, no,
No,
no,
no.
no.
You want to speak to it, or shall I?
Go for it, Scott.
So so it starts with, maybe it doesn't. Start's not the right word. The Bible says he doesn't hold us to account because our sins have been washed away. We've been made new. And so this noose thing that they were talking about in the video, the way I'm seeing that is that's the God spark within us. And the idea is to let that thing within us that is essential for us to be alive grow and go into every nook and cranny in our lives and examine it and get rid of the good stuff. A very easy way to think about it is before Megan came over, everything got thrown into this office to the point where my wife made me promise that Megan could not look to see where these videos were made.
That's such a good, very vivid
Let me
picture.
ask.
Yeah.
Let me ask you something though.
And God wants to come into this space
What I'm
and
asking,
get rid of the junk.
I know I'm not disputing that none of those things are possible. What I'm disputing is the idea that you're going to let that there's this continual progression of the light shining brighter and brighter until the end of time, until the time that we are called. That's what I'm disputing.
I'm willing to agree with you on it's a roller coaster, not a U-shaped, but the roller coaster is trending upwards. It's not, you're not going back down, or you shouldn't. And when you do, it doesn't feel great. Go back down to below where you previously were. And that's the continued growth.
Like a stock market chart.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. You're not going back to where you were, but you still fall deeper and below the Mendoza line, you know, and look at anger sometimes. So like, let's say he gives you victory over anger, you know, rage. And it's wonderful. I mean, it's wonderful. You know, you're walking with the Spirit for 5 years. You just feel really good. And then something triggers you. Something happens. You as a person get triggered, and all of a sudden it rages back up. Are you going to say that? Are you going to say that you fell back into sin? Well, I guess you could say there was a lapse, but the idea that I can get to a place where that never happens again.
I feel
It's
like
hard.
I feel like you're arguing once saved, always saved, and that's not the
Yeah.
conversation. That's not the conversation. This
Yeah,
is
but that's the understanding of this idea. What Scott is struggling, seems to me, what you're struggling with, Scott, is the idea that you're going to be able to shake this thing and it's going to be gone forever. Now, I don't see it that way. I don't think you're going to be able to shake it forever. And the idea that you said it perfectly one day on, I forget whose stream, but you used the term yield.
Mhm.
It's like the letting go. In the rooms, they talk about white knuckling it, right? They're holding onto the rope for dear life and they're just like white knuckling it, you know? Whereas when you just yield and you're letting, the colloquialism is letting go and letting God, like there's something unbelievable that happens when you realize, okay, he's got me and he's working on me. You know, I'm not as bad as I was. I mean, but I know I'm not perfect. I'm not where I want to be, but I'm glad I'm not what I used to be. And so, yeah, there's this progression and there is a kind of a linear walk that's going on. But if I'm constantly judging myself and everything to the degree where I feel like I'm losing my faith almost, right? Like I should be better than this. I shouldn't be doing. Yes, this sucks. You shouldn't have done that. You know, and it should feel bad, and it should be good that it feels bad.
Well, so look, I mean, I'm saying this in the context of what I've been sharing for the better part of 2 months, is that I feel like there have been real significant things revealed to me that I haven't been properly aligned to. And I don't, and what I'm speaking to is the selfishness within myself that doesn't want to realign these things.
Mm-hmm.
I'm
Yeah, that
holding
would,
on.
yeah.
And in order to do that, I'm letting this little fucker out, and it's hurting people. It hasn't hurt people to the degree that I've seen it do before, but it is.
I
Right?
forget, what is it? Philippians 1:14. You know, he's not going to stop the work he started in it.
Yeah, that's encouraging.
Yeah, no. And this is why, and I've been thinking a lot about what I said to you a few days ago about the idea that I feel like he's always chasing me. Right? Because I keep running. Right? I'm that sheep that he's
I hate
keeps,
that song.
you know? What
Theologically,
if I
theo-
just stopped running and I turned around and I faced him? And I allowed those things that need to be burned off to be burned off.
What would that look like?
Right. That's probably the fear.
you know, when he used that description in the parable, it was to convey a point. And the reason why I don't like that song, I hate it, is because from a theological sense, knowing God is everywhere.
Mhm.
And I don't have to even turn around. I have to just stop doing it. And he's right there already. You know what I mean? Now, whatever metaphor people need, you know, the running after me, chasing after me. Okay. I mean, yeah, I get it. If it connects, it connects. I just like, it's like, some theologians don't like the footprints poem, you know, where it's like you look back and you see one set of footprints, and he
Mhm.
said, "Son was carrying me through that time. I wasn't," you know. So it is beautiful. It's a beautiful metaphor, a beautiful picture um, of really what's going on. But in a way, this is really, to me, this is kind of how it is. It's like, you know, in my lowest times when I think that I'm not doing what God wants me to do, golly, man, somehow he's got a hold of me, and he's doing things. It doesn't look really good. It looks nasty. It looks ugly. It's like grinding off a rusty car, you know, and all the rust is coming off, and you know what I mean? And it's painful. But then he gives me these glimmers of hope, you know, these moments in time in my life that is just, wow, I didn't see this being the point of that, you know?
Scott,
Hmm.
what's the utility of the nine-tailed fox?
Um,
Your nine-tailed fox, I mean, not the.
yeah. My fear is that it protects the ickiest parts of me. In many ways, it's the it's the it, it's the embodiment of the rage,
Yeah.
the demand for justice, the vengeance of not just the wrongs to me, but in a but also that I deserve the repercussions of the wrongs that I've committed.
Yeah.
And so by releasing the thing, I damn myself. So it's a
Yeah. So
tool.
it's
It's a tool of
almost
self-destruction.
and with the bullshit of self-justice as a justification.
Yeah.
But do you think though that he really would want you hitting yourself with that every day?
Well, it's not every day, but it comes up in these pivotal moments, like I said, right? Like I've been given the gift of, hey, there's something here. And what started all these conversations and me delving into this is how do I properly align, right? If my life leading up to this point allowed me to align things in a certain way that I've then now been revealed is the wrong way, right? And these things have popped up and cleared up. And we don't have one tradition for me to gleam on, right? But communion is obviously a big part of it. And then you throw on all the other things that we've talked about with at least me. So there's the sacrifice aspect of this, where if we're supposed to participate in the Eucharist and have communion, and if that thing in of itself is a representation of my sacrifice to God, right? And I'm looking at that sacrifice as imperfect, how can I make that sacrifice more perfect without being prideful? And I think the only way to do that is by letting it die. And I don't even know the right way to let it die. This is why I keep talking about just facing God and letting it burn off. Is because I don't even know if in the act of killing it, if that's not a prideful act.
Yeah, there's a
See, the framage
thing.
of the Eucharist, this is the thing right there, what you said. The way you framed the Eucharist was something you're doing versus something that's already been done. It is a participatory sacrifice. I would agree with that. I would just say that it's almost like looking back at the words I use when I describe this activity as if it's something that I did because I walked up there and got it, or something like that. Like this idea that, and it's not to minimize what I'm doing in the moment, like the activity that I'm doing, but the focus on what he has done and why I'm participating in this activity.
Yeah. No, and that was a so this is the interesting thing, because when I was on the side prior to the revelation, right, about that arc that I just described, I desperately wanted communion. And I got it at a funeral at an Episcopal church with my wife's family. And the burden that left me from having been able to participate in that thing was, I believe, God sent, right? And this is where I get the rules thing, and this is why I use the idea of the law as a bludgeon weapon metaphor, is because while I was on that side of the revelation, I believe it was grace that he gave me the opportunity to participate. But now that I'm on the other side of the revelation, and then this thing, obedience. So now I've been given a revelation. that is contrary to the way I had before, which I do believe was God granted in that whole deal. But now this is me going, okay, or this is him going, okay, I want that room. Give me that room.
So when I hear obedience, that's active, right? It's not obedient.
Um,
You see the distinction there?
Not really. No.
One's past tense as if it's the problem has been solved.
Okay, so I must obey. We'll make it present tense.
Yeah, obedience, obey. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And so there's something he wants me to give up. There's something he wants me to let go of. And even in all this, I don't even know the exact thing he wants me to give up. I think that's part of the beautiful thing about what I've been doing is he's like, and I don't know if this makes me crazy or not, but like, does he want me to give up the orientation thing? And how do I rightly orient that thing? Does he want me to give up the whole framework? I don't know. But there's something I feel like he's pointing to. Is it the cat o' nine tails? Right? And I don't necessarily think that's true either, because of what we watched today or just now or earlier in the stream. Like, there's a lot of feeling wrapped up in that guy that I think needs to be properly orientated.
Yeah, like I as a Protestant, I see an invisible church. I see that there's Christians in all traditions. I would say that his tradition doesn't necessarily see it that way. So what's the more loving thing? What's the more loving idea? What?
Let's not get
What?
pumped up into the Protestant versus Ortho tradition thing and
Well,
focus on
that's the
Scots.
difference that we're talking about here.
No, we're talking about Scots wrestling with his
What is Scott
revealed
wrestling with?
transformation. What's to do with the revealed transformation that he might about to be undergoing and how to undergo it? Is it the orientation or is it the I forgot what the other one is, but that was the last thing Scott said, and I wanted to focus on that.
Yeah, well, the issue is though, to me, you're going to have to figure out for yourself, I think, that which tradition, because it is about tradition, is going to see what it sees the way it sees it. So in their tradition, you enter the church body, you participate in the ark. They don't know your heart. It's up to God. They admit that. They agree with me in there. But at the end of the day, they will have you go through this process until you get to a point. Eventually, okay, I want to be a catechumen. You become a catechumen. Now you work through that process. That isn't a set amount of time. Every individual is different. Then you become orthodoxy. So there's like all this is a whole framework, right? That's one way of looking at it. Okay, you believe that? Great. Then there's a different framework, right? A Protestant framework. And there's a lot of different traditions in Protestants that hold different ways of holding office in the church, which is usually the biggest dispute, right? But as far as Christian traditions go in Protestantism, they all agree of the minimum standard, not this other thing. And so because of the way that I see it, and we'll use the term Calvinism, because of the way I see it, it helps me be free from the self-condemnation because I know who I am. I know my nature, but it gives me freedom because I know God's nature and Christ's nature. And I understand that part of it. I connect to that. So because I can see it that way, it orientates exactly how I see myself in the light of eternity. And that's something that has already been done. And again, because I care about it, because I love the fact that he did this, and again, I can't explain why my heart feels the way that it does for him, why I care about this so much, why I'm impassioned about it. Why do I care? You know? So
Let me ask it this way, Brett. When the Holy Spirit reveals something to you, how do you respond? Without all the
sometimes it's rebellious.
Just you. How does Brett handle the revealing of rot?
Right. Sometimes it's rebellion. You know, and I'll go through a period. I'm not letting that go. I don't want to let that go. What do you mean I got to let that go? No, I'm not letting that go. You know? And it's like this, wrestling with God thing. But then it's like, eventually at some point, I get it. Not everything, not all the time. There's still sometimes continuous battles of things I end up picking back up again, and I don't even think about that it even happens sometimes. It's just like all of a sudden I realize I'm in it and I'm gossiping. It's like, like how the hell did that happen again? It's like, this sucks, man. So yes, so when he reveals these things to me, sometimes there's a rebellion, and sometimes it's a beautiful revealing of getting like caught with my hand in the cookie jar. And it's like, oh, but a lot of that comes through prayer. Some of that revealing comes through me wrestling with him on my knees, and then having this moment where that stupid thing pops up into my brain. I didn't conjure that crap. Why would you bring that up at this moment in time? I'm here. I am praising you for how good you are, thanking you for the things you've given me, and asking for some things that I could use help with. And then you pop up some stupid character defect that, comes up into my prayer, in the middle of my prayer. Like, I'm kind of being a wise guy. I'm obviously
that happens to me often.
Yeah, I'm thankful though that it's revealed. And it's kind of why I was saying the 3 A's in recovery, right? They say awareness is the first A, right? And accepting, okay, this is happening. And this is a struggle. And I'm accepting it's a struggle. What's the next day? Trying to put one foot in further and have some action to it. So there is some effort. I'm going to give it a shot. I'm going to do my best. But the idea that I'm going to, again, I'm not saying we can't have victory over things. I think that he does allow us to have victory. But using the Paul Thorne metaphor in the story of Paul, there's going to be things that that's going to be a cross I'm going to have to bear. And the question is, can I be okay with that, even though it bothers me? I'm just thankful that it still bothers me if I'm still struggling with it. Because once I lean into the sin, once I say, I'm not going to let it bother me anymore, I'm going to just accept it, and this is what it is, or it's my identity, or whatever it is that my mind is going to try to convince me of, that's when I'm probably going to need to have a lot of fear.
Thank you.
Yeah, I don't think I have. I don't even know if I said any of my own theology right. I mean, me and my professor were kidding around because we were going over systematics, and he goes, interesting. And I'm like, oh no, what does that mean? He goes, well, the way you just formulated that's a little Arminian. And I'm going, what are you talking about? And then I was able to dissect my train of thought and realize, damn, like I just somehow sneaked me getting credit for something in on something. It was like I didn't even hear it come out of my mouth, you know. And so he kids with me all the time about it, you know. But it's like, but it's funny. It is funny because it's like this is my nature. Like I want to be proud of this thing that he did. Anyway, again,
Yeah.
I might have I don't know.
I
Whatever.
just think you would be, I mean, if I may, I at least I being your friend would benefit more from it being framed in that manner than, you know, they're
Yeah.
they're not doing it right, I'm doing it right, right? You know, just how it relates to you, Brett, and to your relationship with God. I think I would be able to glean a lot more clarity into the direction in which I feel like he's having me move. It feels disconnected when you get down those rabbit holes that I can't really relate to because I think we're thinking on two different levels.
Yeah.
And while I agree that that bigger level of the you know the system is great, like for the times when I'm like myopic and I'm seeing the snake and I need to move away, all that crap doesn't matter. You know what I mean? Not that it's not crap. It's
Yeah.
just I'm trying to reorient my life and getting into, you know, and
This
again,
is
I think it's important. I think it's important, and I think it maps to this a bit because I think that's part of the issue is one of the goals of this space was always to get people back into church. And one of the things about my channel is getting back into a church and which one do I go to? I find problems with all the traditions. Every single damn one of them. And I think part of the problem is the systematizing of the traditions. And it just, and so I think I found so much food here as compared to, my attempts to get back into a church.
What's that been like? When was your last attempt to get back into a church, and how did that go?
It would have been 18 months ago. I was going to the big Baptist church outside of my neighborhood. We got a pretty big Baptist church. They were really pushing me to join. I've considered going as of late. I did go to the Lutheran church once, probably, I don't know, 8-9 months ago. But and I've talked about it here too. Like, I would like the tradition to map as well as it can to and see, even calling it my theology, like I don't.
That's not gonna happen. Even if you started your own church, your church is not gonna map onto your personal theology. That's just the way that goes. We've run the Protestant experiment long enough to realize at least that. I do. Similarly, when I first joined this little corner, I was not going to church. I was at the none of the traditions that I'd been to, and I'd only been to a whole bunch of Protestant traditions at this point. And I was like, okay, I've seen enough to be able to declare that, yeah, I can be Christian by myself. And one of the, at least when I joined in the early 2020, 2021, one of the things that was constant was Peugeot and Vanderclay both constantly screaming, go to church. And eventually I was like, okay, fine, I will. And long story less long, I too sort of had a bit of a dark night of the soul with God, where I had to confront a lot of my own pride about how the bride of Christ should look, and got pretty humble and is like, it's not my bride. I'm not the I'm not the head of the church. That's his bride, and if his bride is a little bit, not to my taste, that's I can, yeah. But what was obvious is that I needed to go to church, because if I was doing Christianity by myself, all I was ever going to see was how everything was wrong. And the agreement I made with God was, okay, fine, I'll go to the one closest by me, so that I never have the excuse of, oh, it's too far, I woke up too late, I can't make it.
Mm.
And that's basically been what I've been doing the last few years. And I say that because one of the things that's been really helpful about this space is learning what people find attractive and beautiful about the different traditions. Because what that's afforded me is the reverse of where I came from, which is I saw all of the faults in the traditions. Now I see all of the ways in which the traditions are, people are seeing the face of God where they're at in their space. And Calvinism, for one, has been one of the ones that's been. I don't call myself a Calvinist, but I'm more Calvinist than not, I think. Uh, Even though my formation is Pentecostal charismatic, and I'm currently attending an Anglican church. But one of the things that Calvinism does, one of the things I've learned that's beautiful about Calvinism is they're insistent that this is God's work and your part in it is non-existence. And it might come off a bit harsh and like they're decreasing the agency of man in the work of salvation, and just on paper, your brain thinks that means that a person should be, the man will become lazy and not wanting to become more like Christ, and it will just be, stick to their sin, and they're saved and it's all Christ's work, blah blah blah. But the reality of it is it's the opposite, and it's
Mm.
from that point of grace, receiving the grace, that you have gratitude to be able to climb up slowly and clean up your dirty rag, as we've been saying. So I want to encourage you to see the ways in which the traditions are helpful. There are many, many ways in which they're not, but there are loads of ways in which they are to Christians that are within those traditions. And that's one of the things that this space has been good for. I mean, I've got I've got a rosary on right now.
Yeah, I totally agree. So like the really beautiful thing is being able to taste all the different bread. And
It tastes a lot sweeter when you can
fair.
also share the things that's good about the space that you're in.
Yeah. Yeah. So thank you. I hope by me being like this, it's encouraging others that like this it's not unusual to be doing this. I don't want to be in this spot forever, but I'm just trying to show that like I know I'm not going to be in this valley forever. And I'm walking with intention, knowing that I'm going to be climbing the mountain again. And so I hope it brings some peace to others to know. And I hope everybody here knows how much I've come to appreciate the opportunity to commune. It may not be in its fullest form, but having this is it's been a help, and I cannot express how much growth has come from this structure existing, at least for me. And so the more you get into it, which gives me hope that the right participation in all these things that I've mentioned today will also yield fruit. So,
Yeah, I
what
I
time?
think it's yielding fruit for a lot of people, not just you, for sure, 100%.
I can attest to that. It's definitely very helpful. I'm very late to just the magic of Scott, but now that I've tasted and seen how good it is, I'm now a big member of the Scott fan club, and what you're doing has been very helpful for all of
Well,
us,
good.
even the ones that come on to disagree with you.
Yeah, no, I'm glad. I saw that Luke was in here earlier. I hope also he didn't take this as me being anything but respectful. So
Yeah,
let
piss
me spend some
Luke
time
off
with
a
the
lot more
wife
than
on
you
my
do.
day off. So I'm sorry, T. Go ahead.
No, that's fine, please. I was just making a stupid joke. You end the stream. God bless.
All right. All right. Thanks, y'all. Thank you,
See you
Brett.
later. You got it, brother.
Love you, man.
Love you too.